morning. We're going to read to Mouse. This is our third day of reading Squeaky and the Little Horses by Christian Beverly. It takes a while to read Mouse one story. So, we'll go back so you can watch the other two videos to see the rest of the story. Squeaky wasn't sure who they were, but he didn't want anyone dying on his watch. He pushed his nose against the top, sniffing it for a scent other than plastic and not finding any. He opened it, then he listened. Tiny nickers and whinnies. Anika? Squeaky started. Anika stuck her face into the tub. She seemed fine with live little horses. You know this is the bad type of magic, Squeaky said. Anika shook her head. Squeaky often wondered if the tiny head contained a brain or if it had all been wasted on beauty, but it didn't matter right now. Right now, there were tiny creatures that weren't supposed to be moving. I wanted to do this type of magic. It actually does something, Anika said. And yes, I've heard the stories. I don't care. Squeaky hissed. It was a weird sound coming from him, as if he rarely ever used it, which he never did, but it needed to be made. He wanted the magic out of his paws. How are you going to make this better by morning, Squeaky asked. I doubt she'd be happy about it. You saw the ribbons. Anika ignored him, her eyes bright as she watched the bubble wrap move. He moved around the container, watching the bubble-wrapped horses move like a wave. A small head popped out and stared at him. One tiny horse jumped out of the tub. Her face was small and refined. She stood about 8 inches high at her ears, and she flicked her tail. How? Squeaky sighed before sniffing her. Magic. The horse nodded like she understood, but how can one understand when they'd never been alive prior? How? Squeaky grabbed a piece of bubble wrap with his mouth and pulled backwards, exposing more models. A herd of tiny horses. It was a herd of tiny horses. They ran away from him in a herd. Anika patted next to Squeaky and yawned. You can't be tired, Squeaky snapped. How are we going to fix this? Anika growled. Doesn't matter. They're fine. And the magic will go down. All's good. Just don't eat them. Squeaky leaned back. Me? Eat them? Why would I do that? Anika swiped her tail back and forth. You eat the kitten's food. You eat all of the treats. Why wouldn't you eat tiny horses? Squeaky walked away and sat down. Loosen up, Squeaky, Anika purred. This won't happen again. The tiny horses came out again and Anika chased after them. Squeaky paused before galloping after. They ran and ran around the store, paws scraping where hooves had recently pounded. They didn't ask each other for names because they would have had to stop, and stopping meant recognizing that this would eventually end. The horses climbed into the tub as the sun began to come up. Squeaky would not miss them in the way they were as a whole. He'd miss them individually, though. The magic had dulled throughout the night, like it had finally let some of its build-up simmer down to a manageable level, and the horses felt it. They walked with their heads and tails low, feet dragging behind them, like they'd been given medicine. It had been a full night, one that he'd missed, but never wanted to participate in again. Will you miss being whole? Squeaky asked. The little Clydesdale stopped his walk and looked at Squeaky. His dark brown eyes seemed puzzled. Why would you say that? You can't move anymore. I think one night of this is enough to last my whole life, the horse said. I never want to do this again. Living would be hard if you spent your whole life stilled. The next morning, Kay walked in and nearly screamed. Why was the container to her models open? And how on earth were they positioned the way they were? The end. Did you like that story? I loved that story, Mouse. We want to say thank you so much to Christian Beverly for writing it, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.